Hi guys, welcome back to Fashion School with Nick Varios. Today's a very special day. Why? Because I'm going to show you how to drape a bias cut dress. Yay! Before we get started, you're going to need a couple things. Of course, you're going to need your dress form. Hi. And then you're going to need your fabric. Now, you want to cut two pieces of the fabric, one for the front and one for the back. Each should be 45 inches long by 45 inches wide. Now, I like to use this kind of fabric, which is a softer poly satin charmeuse, as opposed to that stiff muslin that you use for everything else. And I like to go in the fabric sale bins of the store to get them. I don't pay more than $1.99 for these kind of fabrics when I'm draping. Okay, last thing, you need to mark your bias grain on your fabric. Now, to learn how to do that, go to my video, straight grain versus cross grain. Okay, now that you're ready, let's get to draping. Okay, we're ready to drape a bias dress. Now, I want to do a little mini cowl in the front. So what do? I fold my fabric, like you see, like a handkerchief, kind of about 10 inches down. Do you see that, the fold? And put one finger about 12 inches away from the bias line. Do you see the bias line I marked? And then about 12 inches from the other. You want to make sure that that center front, that bias grain line is in the center front. So you want to do this and then lift it up and pin the shoulder, just like that. See? It's already created the cowl. Look at that! Shut up! Okay, and now do the other side. I have my finger holding it right there. Make sure again that your bias grain line is in the center front. So I go here and I pin, just like that. And then I just sort of, there, oh look, that's the cowl, a little mini cowl in the front. Okay, next thing, really important, you want to pin your bias grain line down the center front. Now you can feel it in your form. So get your pins out and then just start pinning. I would say right below the ampere line and just start pinning. I would say about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of space in between. So look at this, just start pinning and always pin at an angle, okay? So just pin, just like that. And it's really important that you give 1 inch to 1.5 inch space, because otherwise it's going to create too much space and then the fabric will move. Your drape will move. You don't want it to move. You want it to be hunkered down, okay? Because it's bias, it's slippery, okay? So keep pinning. And just pin to the bottom of the form, right here. Okay, there we are. Good. All right, now you've done your center front pinning. Now you're going to drape your bias dress to the side seam. So we're going to do one side seam first and then the other. So the first side seam, what you're going to do is you're going to drape it. Now what that involves, it involves smoothing it. You don't want to do this. You don't want to pull, okay? That's too tight. Remember, think of the bias slip dress. It just slips on you. It doesn't hug you too tight. So you want to just smooth to the side seam right here, and you can feel out the side seam and then just pin. Just pin the side seam, and you want to begin right below the arm plate and just start pinning. Okay, about 1 inch to 1.5 inch intervals, again at an angle. Now I want you to notice something. Look, this is what bias does. Watch. Look at that. It just smooths, it hugs the curves. That's why you don't need a dart. You don't need a dart for bias. It almost acts like a knit, but not really, all right? Because you're cutting it on the diagonal on the bias and it stretches, it gives, all right? So pin down the side seam. See, look at that. Look at that. You wouldn't be able to do that on a straight grain, trust me. Okay, so just keep pinning. All right, and I don't know if you notice, come a close up, look at the bias grain line right here. See, it shows you the bias grain line, all right? Now keep pinning down the side, and just to the bottom of the form right there. Now do that for the other side. Okay, now that we've pinned both of our side seams, I want to show you something. Look at all this. This is excess, because it's on the bias. This is all going to be waste, and this is why bias cut gowns are very expensive, because they waste a lot of fabric, which is a big no-no, unless it's a bias cut dress, and that's why they're expensive. So we're gonna cut this, okay, because it's waste. And yes, it's expensive, okay? Well, not this fabric, but if it was like a silk. All right, so cut this out before you mark. And do it on both sides. Now, while you're doing that also, do it for one side as well as the other. Clip at the waist. Just clip, and that'll relax it a little bit. If you want, also, just keep clipping. See? See this right here? See that? Pulling? All right? You just want to keep clipping, and that just helps relax the bias a little bit. So do this for the other side as well, all right? And then we're going to mark. Now that we've cut the excess, that waist, and we've pinned it everything and we've clipped to relax the bias, now it's time to mark, okay? Now first of all, let's mark the armholes. Now we're gonna do an inset armhole because this doesn't have a sleeve. So I just wanna show you how you would do that. So you start at the shoulder and then you wanna mark, just like that. See, keep marking, and what you wanna do is you wanna go about 1/2 inch below the arm plate. There's the arm plate, go about 1/2 inch, all right? And that's gonna be your armpit, okay? So just scoot it down, just curve it down, almost like a C. Do you see that? And that's your armhole. And then just continue marking. Now, I'm using a Sharpie, all right? But you guys should use a pencil or a colored crayon, or a Sharpie if you own your form, okay? So I'm gonna mark the side seam, mark the waist, keep marking the side seam, and you're gonna do this for the other side as well, okay? So just keep marking. All right, there we go. And then mark your hem. So we've marked our hem, we've cut the excess of our hem, and I think we're almost ready, except, do you see this excess fabric here? Let's cut it. So I'm gonna cut this like that. See, oh, look, armhole, and do it for the other side as well. Okay, all right, now we're ready to drape the back. Now for the back drape, I want to do a very dramatic plunging cowl back, like that. Okay, and what you want to do then is you want to fold your drape just like what you did in the front one, but fold it a little longer, a little deeper. Do you see that? So it's about 18 inches of a fold. And then also place your fingers, your hand, also a bit longer, about 18 to 20 inches. So what you want to do is then line it up, line up your bias grain to the center back, just like that. Do you see that? See how it's lined up to the back? And then now place on the shoulder, have a pin right there, and pin. There you go. So one is pinned. Make sure that this is straight down the center back, and then pin on the other shoulder, just like that. And look, we've got a plunging cowl back. Now you can do even more plungier, all right? But we're gonna make it a little more sexy and discreet like this. Okay, next step, you wanna pin your bias grain down the center back. Now make sure you feel it out, have your pins, and I start right around the waist, okay? And then I start pinning, and pin on 1 inch intervals, okay? And do it at an angle. Another way also of pinning is slide it through if you want to like hunker it down really, but you can just keep pinning, pin down the center back to the bottom of the form, okay? And you want to do that again, every 1 inch to 1.5 intervals, so your fabric doesn't slip out. Okay, now that you've pinned the center back, you want to pin the side seam. So I'm going to tilt the form slightly and then show you what happens here, okay? So now you don't want to lose this cowl. A lot of people when they're draping, especially on the bias, and the bias is what creates this beautiful drape, by the way. Hello, you really can't do that on the straight grain. This is the beauty, the excitement of bias cut dresses, that you can get this effect, but you don't want to ruin it, because I've seen a lot of people do this when they're draping. Watch. And then they just like ruin the cowl. You want to keep the drape there. Do you see that? So just keep it softly and then start pinning on the side seam, okay? So I start pinning, and I start pinning here, and I start pinning here, all right? Now watch, do you see this tension right here? Now here's a trick. I'm going to clip this. I'm going to cut all this excess again, waist. And then watch, I'm going to clip. And this helps me. See, this helps me with the drape. And so then I'm going to continue the pinning. right here down the side seam. And just keep pinning down the side seam and just make sure that you have this beautiful drape right here. Do you see this cowl right here? Look, I'm gonna remove this and then just do that. Now here's another trick. Do you see this pulling here? What you wanna do is you can smooth it out. Do you see that? Just smooth and drape right here to the hip area. Just smooth it to the hip and that can smooth out some of that. Again, you don't want it too tight. It's a bias dress, it just slips on you, all right? Okay, and then just keep pinning every 1 inch to 1.5 inch intervals down the side seam, just like that. All right, and then now do the same for the other side. All right, so now we've draped our back bias dress drape. Now you're ready to mark it. Now I use a Sharpie, but you can use crayons or pencils, okay? So we're gonna mark it. First, mark the shoulder, and then the armhole. Remember, it's gonna be an inset armhole, so just follow it just like that. Mark it with a broken line, and you wanna come to about 1/2 inch below the arm plate. All right, see? And do kind of a curved C, just like that. And then now mark the side seams. You can feel it out, just like this. Just mark, mark, mark. Mark the waist, mark right there, the side seam. Keep going down to the bottom. All right, and you want to do that for the other side seam as well. And for your hem, just follow the same directions of what you did to the front hem. You can do it to the back. All right, now that we've marked our side seams as well as marked our hem, it's time for a really fun thing that I like to do, and that's pin the dress together as if I'm sewing it, okay? So I'm gonna do that right now, and then you're just gonna cut the excess. All right, so I'm gonna do this on the sides. You're gonna do that to both sides. And you're gonna pin the dress together. Just think as if you're sewing it, okay? So I'm just pinning it right here, pinning it together. This is when you see the garment just come alive, really. And it's good for presentation. You know, we do this in school to like sort of present it to the instructor, but then you can also present it to your mom and dad or whoever, you know, to show like, this is my design, this is what it'll look like. You can present it to your client. It's like a mock-up. And so I'm doing it right to the hem, and so I've done it, and then now you want to cut off the excess. So see all this? So just cut it off. All right, and also cut off right here in your armhole. Cut that off. All right, so I've pinned my dress to the bottom. I've cut the sides, and now you can remove your pins down the center front. Anticipation, it's getting exciting. I can't wait. And I think we're done. So here we go. Our bias cut dress, look at the back. Hello. And look at the front. Bias drape cocktail hour. Thanks for watching Fashion School with Nick Varios. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions, leave them all below. And don't forget, for more Nick tips and tricks, get my book, A Passion for Fashion. It's available on Amazon.com.